The warmth of a fire is the greatest of comforts. There may be arguments towards more efficient devices to produce heat within a living environment, but they lack our primal relationship with fire, a relationship that is faceted and poetic. I have grown up depending on a wood stove for central heat, a lifetime of labor and appreciation. The stove that contains the fire becomes that of the soul of a home. My little home is only a couple of years old, christened into a home by the flame residing in a stove that I built with my hands. I am not completely sure of the dimensions. I didn't take notes, and it has been over a year since I fabricated this. The firebox is lined with fire brick. Other than that, the entire stove is constructed from mild steel, TIG welded, and primarily built from 10 gauge. 10 gauge is a questionably thin choice of material, but in my design I trusted it would not warp or surrender over time. The draft plate within the firebox is 1/4 inch thick material. On the sides and back of the firebox, I built 3 pockets with 16 gauge thick material, leaving the tops open. These pockets result in a significant volume that has been filled with sand. I was inspired to design and fabricate this stove after watching a popular YouTube channel video on thermal batteries. The sand is a thermal battery that easily radiates heat well into the morning after a moderately lit fire. This prolonged lifespan of radiating heat is less work, less fuel, and more time being comfortable. In my opinion, the added mass applies such grand perks that I am rather curious on why it hasn't been interfaced with metal stoves in the past. It is a hybrid of qualities of earth and mass with the innovative functions that keep us safe from the flame. The sand is why I chose to risk building the stove with such thin material. The sand helps keep the stove conformed in shape, as well as providing a heat sink that will prevent the steel from warping. The sand does not produce any thermal shock, and it begins drawing heat from the steel as soon as any exchange takes place within the firebox. This relationship allows the steel to pass on that heat energy to a greater mass which can better contain it. This will also allow the steel to cool at a slower rate than otherwise without the sand. The slow cooling rate will prolong the life of the steel. On the top, I was especially worried about deformation, but this little dish of sand cut from a 6-inch pipe is surprisingly capable of being a heat sink and gives a nice aesthetic contrasting against the steel. The flue collar is 4-inch tubing which accepts a 4-inch stovepipe pretty much perfectly. It would have been just as feasible to design around a 6-inch stovepipe, but I was curious about the 4-inch. So far, I have noticed nothing odd about using a smaller diameter stovepipe compared to the conventional 6 or 8-inch. The door handle is a simple shape that I took inspiration from the wood stove I grew up using. It's ergonomic and easily latches the 1/2-inch round bar to secure the door closed. The air vent is built into the door. The door itself has 2 bulbous slots cut out that pull air into the firebox whenever I open the vent. The vent cap is 2-inch tubing that obviously covers the slots in the door with a little plate and handle. Going underneath, the legs are 2-inch by 1-inch tubing. They are capped, which I drilled and tapped so I could use bolts to level the stove. I had originally planned on a stone hearth with irregular surfaces. There were some trials along the way. Some design flaws that had to be corrected, but as this stove sits now, it is efficient, easy to light a fire, and it doesn't smoke.